Hey, Buru, Iboya, Ibucheche, everybody in Cyberland, Shafir Bawalao. At least I hope so. Homo Odun Odile Ke, coming at you with another great video. I guess next time I gotta remember to hit the mute button. That'd be nice. But at the end of the day, hey, I'm glad that each and every one of you are on here today to kind of support the good cause, right? Support what it is to educate in the faith of Ifa. And as we go through Ifa and as we go through life, it's important for us to always have these moments of reflection. So again, I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in today. I appreciate each and every one of you spending your Sunday night with me. Hopefully, as you guys begin to wind down and start the new work week, maybe I leave you with something small, something to reflect on. Right. So, as always, hey, feel free to hit the like button, the share button. If you like the content, please make sure that you guys constantly, educate each other. Right. IFA is all about community. IFA is all about what can we do to ensure that we push the faith forward. So I appreciate each and every one of you. So, hey, so for today, something I want to kind of just share with you guys was the aspect of an Odung of IFA that's called Irosun Osa. I have a brother, Bawalao, that, his apitibi is Irosun Osa. I have Babalaos that I'm familiar with Irosun Osa. And I thought that this was a really good Odun to speak on because this particular Odun reflects many, many aspects of life, things that happen in everyday life. And I thought it was important for us to kind of make sure that we speak on this. But more importantly, right, I want you guys to interact. I want you all to start asking questions. Maybe you have this odun as a bawalao. Maybe you have this odun in your awufaka or your ikofa, which is your hand of ifa or mano de arula, depending on how you refer to it. But more importantly, let's interact. And I want to hear your feedback. This is live. I got the chat group I'm looking at. So as you guys ask questions, we'll go and we'll continue to kind of maneuver through your questions. But I like to start out with the Pataki. I think it's important to remember, that a lot of the sacred stories that we have that are called Patakis always give us moral and ethical lessons to ensure that we are doing what we need to do to elevate ourselves to a divine alignment with Yorodi, right? Which is the aspects of understanding ourselves, the aspects of understanding life. The mysteries of life are here for you, and they've been captured through sacred stories. So we're going to start with that. So this Pataki, the title of this Pataki is The Lazy Farmer and the Warning of Orunmila, or more particularly, Orunmila and the Ancestors. So, little boy, James, you pulled this all doing in January 2022. Well, we're going to see where this takes you. And then you tell us if you can relate to some of this. Okay, so Pataki, Lazy Farmer, Warning of Orunmila. Hey, so once upon a time, right, there was a man that was named Adisa. Adisa was a farmer who lived in a small village. Adisa had inherited a vast and fertile land, right, from his ancestors. But this land was farmlands, right? But he was very lazy and careless at times. So instead of cultivating the land diligently, he spent his days in idleness, procrastination, right? The other farmers in the village warned him that if he neglected the land, it will lead him to misfortune. But Adisa dismissed their advice. So one day, Adisa approached Orunmila for divination because he was plagued by strange dreams. In these dreams, he would see his farm engulfed in flames, and his ancestors would weep bitterly. So Orunmila casted Ifa and revealed the Odun Irosun Osa, or Irosun Sa, which contained some strict warnings. So Orunmila told Adisa hey, your ancestors are displeased with you because you neglect their legacy. They worked hard to secure the land, and it is blessings for you. But because of the laziness, you are dishonoring the ancestors. So if you don't change your ways, your farm will be taken away from you, and you're going to suffer great hardship, right? So Orunmila told him, in order to avert, right, this fate, you got to perform some sacrifices. These sacrifices come in the form of, certain particulars that Irosun San, gravitates to: the rooster, honey, right? The obi, the coconut, a white cloth, which is connections to Obadala. And we're going to offer something to Eshu using those ingredients because Eshu and Irosun Sa is important. So Rumila goes to tell him to clean himself and his lands, to use a mix of certain ewes to purify his body and sprinkle the remaining water on his farmland, and to begin to be more diligent, right? Be a little bit more outgoing on attending the land and doing what he's supposed to do. So Rumila emphasized that the blessings from the farmland cannot only happen with the can only not just happen with Ebo, but it has to be with the manifestation of his constant labor, right? Because that's the respect of the ancestral legacy that was left behind for him. So initially, right, Adisa, he heeded Orumila's instructions, right? He performed the Ebo, he cleansed himself and the farm. However, old habits are hard to die, right? So within weeks, Adisa went back to his lazy ways. He assumed that the sacrifices was enough to secure his prosperity, right? So, one night as Adisa slept, a fierce storm swept through the village. Lightning struck the farm, setting the fields ablaze, right? The flames, they swept through his farmland. They destroyed all his crops. And a once fertile land became basically a wasteland, became very barren. So Adisa was devastated and went back to Orunmila for guidance. So Orunmila reminded Adisa that the Odu Irosun Sa teaches that blessing requires effort. Even with the interventions of Orisha, humans still got to play their part, right? And this is important. So you neglected, or Adisa's neglect to the farmland was rewarded with Osobo, misfortune that took root. The ancestors provided you with wealth, but without your work and respect, it cannot grow. And those are words from Orunmila to Adisa. So Adisa begged Orunmila for another chance. Orunmila, moved, by his sincerity, instructed him to perform another Ebo and to commit fully to his responsibilities. This time, Adisa transformed his life. He worked tirelessly on the farm, and over time, the farm became fertile again. Adisa became known as the village, as a model villager and a model farmer of that village, right? Which indicated perseverance and respect for ancestral blessings. So, what are we saying here? Right? We're not saying Irosun Sa is a sign of lazy and procrastinated people. No, we're not saying that at all. So, James, don't take it that way, Buddha boy. But what we are saying is that you can easily fall into those pitfalls of procrastination, right? Of not doing your part in order to ensure the success of your prosperity. A couple of things that we have to take from this story was, one, the ancestors communicate to you. Irosun Sa is a very spiritual sign that has a lot of great connection with their ancestral lineage. Irosun Sa has the what we call the don in Spanish, the ability, right, to have a connection with those ancestors, whether it be through dreams, through visions, through hearing. Irosun Sa is a very spiritual sign. Irosun Sa is a sign at the end of the day that we have to begin to look at, some of not just the connections, but what has the ancestors been trying to communicate to you in order for you to truly, find yourself in a better place aligned with your ori so that you can meet your destiny. Irosun Sa at the end of the day is a sign that says that we have to always sacrifice to Eshu in order for Eshu to to open up those roads, right? Open up those abilities for us to be successful in life. So Irosun Sa is a sign that says that, we're very close. And in this case, the farmland was the area of contention, right? In this Pataki, but it talks about the relationship that we have with Orisha Oku. It's important for Irosun Sa to almost every year feed the earth because what the earth gives, the earth can take. In this case, it was the very nature that took that farmland away from Adisa. So when we begin to analyze those things, we say, wow, there's a lot to this. So let's look a little deeper into this moral of the story, right? So effort is indispensable, right? Irosun Sa, or this sign, has to make sure they stay on top of the things that they have to do. The material and the spiritual blessings requires not just the ebo, but it also requires the action behind the what we call ifainu, which is the ability of to expound, not just do the ebo, but also give me the physical actions to complement the ebo. I don't just sit back and do an ebo and think that everything's going to work out great. You need to think about it, and we all need to think about it, not just those with the Irosun Sa, that this is a 50-50 relationship. Yeah, you can do the ebo as prescribed, but then you also have to put in your effort, right? And then Irosun Sa also teaches us about ancestral respect, the legacy. Neglecting the hard work and the sacrifices, right, of those before us will lead to losses and dishonor. Irosun Sa has something that a lot of people, I guess they aspire to when we talk about generational wealth. Irosun Sa is very good at those things. So when you start talking about money and money moves, right? You talk about, setting up estates and funds, right, for the family and all those different type of financial management tricks that you can do. Irosun Sa thrives in. Irosun Sa is good for investments. That's a good for Irosun Sa. Irosun Sa talks a lot about the spiritual and the physical balance, like I was telling you, and we got to make sure that we maintain that. And then Irosun Sa also says that the Orishas and the Eguns will never give up on you. Why? Because Irosun Sa is redemption, right? Is redemption when there's a sincere commitment, no different than in this Pataki of Adisa. So let's look at it and let's reflect on that, right? Let's look at it even today, right? We understand that there's a lot of success in careers and business, and there's demands and constant effort, right? And we can't just rely on external help or luck. No, Irosun Sa is a worker. Irosun Sa has to work. That's that Odung is what dictates that. The ethical stewardship of things, right? Neglecting natural resources or failing to act, to sustain leads to ecological disasters. Irosun Sa has to be very connected, right, to the environment. Irosun Sa cannot be one that's gonna, litter here, litter there, right? And let me pause right there because I want to make sure that I'm making sure I make this one point. Irosun Sa was a lesson that came down to this world for everybody. Yes, it may apply a little bit, more constraint to someone who has this sign, has to live and die and eat and breathe Irosun Sa and the lessons and the osobos and the ires, right? But more importantly, Irosun Sa is a lesson for everybody. This is why, when we talk about work ethics and we talk about, the environment, when we talk about cultural heritage and those type of things, we got to make sure that we're all being part of that solution, because Ifa is dictating that. So let's look into Irosun Osa. Let's look into Irosun Osa. Before I jump in there, hey, little boy, Coach Jose, my brother. Baldo, little boy, Bucheche, James, Greg, little boy, my man. Hey, so when we talk about Irosun Osa, something else I want to kind of dig into a little bit. Irosun Osa acknowledges that hardship, right, often precedes growth, right? That means that, no matter what happens to you as time goes on, it's very important for us to always understand that our hard work will come with its benefits. Our hard work will lead us to destiny. Our hard work, teaches us that, the value of resiliency, right? So there's lessons to be learned through these layers of hard work. So when we look at those things, we have to truly resonate on that we have to work hard in this world. Now, wisdom from adversity. Those struggles that you went through, those struggles that are going to lead you to the promised land, believe it or not, they're also building this concept of wisdom in you. It acknowledges that the hardship then precedes the growth and then teaching the value of resiliency. So that means you're what we call a force multiplier. That means that as you grow, you partake in giving that wisdom to others so that they can grow. It also signs one of those signs when in Henry Bifa or Ikofa that are good for priests and priestesshoods because their destiny aligns with what a priest and a priestess is supposed to do. Right? You go get crowned Ocha, or you become a Babala or what that looks like. But your Odun now dictates that you have a path and a destiny to be that teacher and that community leader. Irosun Osa is a beautiful sign there. So then, as we resonate on that, right, we got to emphasize on the learning from failure, cultivating, right, and setting the stage for personal and professional growth. That's super important. Hey, some of the practical things that Irosun Osa needs to always remember is the ritual of cleaning. Right? We saw in this particular Pataki that there were some obras, there were some emboses that was actually marked here that you can actually go to, go to your Babalao, go to your Olo CYU, go to who you need to go to in order for them to harness this energy, right? In this Pataki, that energy was harnessed by giving the rooster to Eshu, by using the honey and the white cloth and the herbs, especially the Ewe Koko. So when we talk about those things for purification, that's important. And Irosun Osa, sacrifice to Eshu and Ogun, that neutralizes all your negativity and it promotes the stability. Irosun Osa has a strong pact with the Orisha that created the roads and the Orisha that opens all the roads. It's a beautiful pact nonetheless. So we got to look at it, and we got to look at it in a practical sense with the ideas of resetting one's energy and maintaining emotional and spiritual hygiene is what I like to call it. This translates to mindfulness, right? It's important for people with Irosun Osa that they have to learn how to kind of meditate and get in tune with themselves and their ancestors. Irosun Osa is a sign that when we talk about, ewes, when we talk about things that are prohibited, when we talk about, the don'ts and the do's, right? The do's and the don'ts and this particular sign. The first one that pops into mind is this is an old doom that warns against impulsive decisions. It urges patience, right? And you have to make calculated actions. Irosun Osa has too many responsibilities at the end of the day that they're trying to juggle too much sometimes, or they just don't want to juggle anything at all and they become stagnant. But Irosun Osa cannot be like that. Irosun Osa teaches all of us, even those that don't have that particular odun, that we have to push hard and we got to keep moving. So, if you reflect this particularly on, the modern day, right, where we're at today, we're in a fast-paced age. Think about it. Technology is here. So wisdom is critical, right? But we have to avoid burnout. In Irosun Sa, I think that work-life balance, or if we even carve that further, the work life, the life is actually broken out into a spiritual, right, and a personal concept. We have a lot of things to juggle, right? And when we break that personal life down a little bit more, you can talk about children, you can talk about spouses, you can talk about that. Irosum Sa is a sign that reflects to us, and we have to stay grounded. We got to be careful not to burn ourselves out in life. We have to enjoy life as well. Irosum Sa, at the end of this, financial missteps, right? This Pataki also resonated with me because in the sign in Yodung of Irosum Sa, we got to be very mindful about financial missteps. We got to make sure that we're investing in the areas that we need to invest in. We got to focus on the things that we need, not necessarily the things that we want. And you can still have the things that you want, but just make sure you understand your responsibilities and the obligations that you have. That makes sense. So we have to stay grounded, right? We gotta be careful with the career pitfalls. The problem with the Irosun Sai is, as we reflect back onto the Pataki, we talked about, laziness and procrastination. And again, I'm gonna say it again, not a hit on anybody with Irosun Sai, but in Irosun Sai, we look for shortcuts. In Irosun Sai, we try to get ahead as best as we can, so we try to find some shortcuts. In Irosun Sai, you gotta stay grounded to the truth, right? You gotta make sure that your decision making is grounded and not in research and analytics and foresight. You gotta make sure you're planning things out before you execute it because a lot of other old dooms and a lot of other folks that have destined signs may be able to shoot from the hip. What I call shoot from the hip is that they're spontaneous, right? And they do things and boom, next thing you know, it happens, or it comes out well for them. But Irosun Sa, you gotta slow down. You gotta think about it. You gotta imagine it. You gotta write it down, plan it out, and then execute. Right? It's just a reminder, right? That for professionals and leaders to practice, what we call servant leadership, ensuring that the actions, right, benefit the broader community rather than our own personal ambition. That's kind of like the view that I see it today. Some sides are very strong, independent, individuals that are destined for greatness and destined for leadership. As I mentioned earlier, we talked about the priest and the priestess concepts of Irosun Sa, but that's because they understand that concept of servant leadership. And for those who maybe like to read or like to maybe audio books, there's a great book called Servant Leadership, and I'm trying to remember who wrote it. But Irosun Sa, I strongly recommend that book for you. It's a great leadership book, but it can show you how to look at things from a broader perspective. In Irosun Sa, this particular Odun emphasizes paying attention to your health, particularly your dietary restrictions, right? The bosses that you're marked for your Odun, if you're crowned, what did all the Orishas speak on and how does that complement Irosun Sa? You got to begin to look at some things in Irosun Sa in order to ensure that we're locking down your health, your well-being, right? Both on a physical and a spiritual standpoint. Irosun Sa, when we look at it and we really dig into it, Irosun Sa supports practices, that or Irosun Sa pushes the person and pushes all of us, right, to eat well, eat organically, right? Engage in a little bit of gym time and work the body out. But more importantly, your mental health, your mental resiliency. Because obviously with Irosun Sa, when we talk about a sign that leads to barriers, that leads to learning hard lessons and gaining and garnering the wisdom of experiencing in life, right? That comes with challenges. Sometimes we can overwhelm ourselves. So Irosun Sa, you got to take care of yourself mentally. You got to treat yourself sometimes, to disconnect and maybe go on that vacation you need to go to. maybe you need to sit down and look at your family and see how you are reacting to the family, because sometimes when you're overwhelmed, again, you either procrastinate, you push away. So Irosun Sa just teaches us making sure that we have that resiliency in our life. Irosun Sa. Yeah, Alicia, you might be right. I don't remember the author's name for servant leadership, but a Buddha boy, Buddha boy Janelle, a Buddha boy James. I think you're right, James. I think it's Robert Greenleaf. I think so. But it's a great book. Great book. Hey, so, and I appreciate you guys looking it up. So Iburu, Iburu. All right. So then when we talk about, the physical health side, another piece of this that I think is important, and I'm glad that we got a lot of great people in here kind of putting those authors out there for the servant leadership book. But I think it's important to understand that, when we talk about, what is modern leadership, right? And we look and reflect back on the Pataki. Some of the things that I hone in on is that, leaders are advised, right, to honor past traditions. We learn lessons from the past. You can name 100 different things that are happening in the community, in the world today, and you can see a glimpse of the past. A lot of things that we just did not learn in the past, we repeat in the future. And that's something that we really got to resonate with. Sometimes it's important for us to learn from other people's mistakes instead of us making our own mistakes. That's why we got to sometimes humble ourselves. And with the sign of Odun, or Irosun Sa, we gotta really be careful about that, right? Because, if we honor past traditions while making decisions to balance the collective and the individual needs, right? So, for example, not just for yourself, but for your family, not just for yourself at your workplace, but for your coworkers, right? That's an application that if you learn that modern leadership style, back to that servant leadership concept, you will be successful. We will all be successful, even though we don't have Irosun, because this is one of the applications that Ifa is trying to tell us that we need in our life, and that's important. In addition, in addition, Irosun Sa is a good sign for corporate and community leadership, right? It translates to almost an inclusive decision-making process, a person that's a strategic thinker, right? And that one that is supposed to be considering historical lessons and planning for a sustainable future, right? Irosun Sa is deep like that. Irosun Sa is a great sign. It's a beautiful sign. Irosun Sa is a sign that my grandson has. And I was super excited when I pulled that out, so my grandson, when he pulled it, I said, wow, Irosun Sa. I just got to make sure I keep him active. I got to make sure that he understands value. I need to but you guys get it, right? But you know something about Irosun Sa, you're good for politics. You're good for governing. You're good for management, right? Because, Irosun Sa, if done properly, you get to see and understand the importance of transparency. You begin to see the importance of ethical behavior and accountability. And you begin to bring the collective together in order to truly lead people to where you need them to go. Irosun Sa, you're a leader. You're a born leader. You got to take the reins and run with it. Irosun Sa. Irosun Sa. Irosun Sa, I would also challenge you to look at the sustainable development of things. What I mean by that, it also is an order that encourages harmony, right, with nature and spiritual laws, right? And when we look at nature and spiritual laws, or natural and spiritual laws, we have to complement those things with many different aspects, right? But when I say this, it's just not just a spiritual spill on Irosun Sa. This is, how do I apply this to my family? How do I apply this to my profession? How do I, apply Irosun Sa to my family, friends, whatever that may be, so that you can have the prosperity, the stability, the love, the blessings, etc. Irosun Sa is a sign of advocation. You need to advocate, right, for those moral and those ethical values. You need to be careful not to allow people to drag you into immoral, unethical, or illegal situations. Irosun Sa is a sign that being that it's a sign of very good intelligence, very good spirituality, sometimes you want to push the envelope too fast, too hard. And what that causes is some of those crises, right, that can occur in your family, your workplace. And so you have to be careful on how far you push that envelope. So we have to meditate on things. It also is a sign that, the modern strategy, meditation, conflict resolution, restorative justice, they're good at the advocacies and at the protesting and the civil rights and handling interpersonal and systemic issues. It also is a sign that they can see the problem. They can see where the problem is the process. The problem is the process, but it needs to be changed, right? Irosun Sa is one of those signs that I always tell people, be very careful, Irosun Sa's out there. But for again, collectively for everyone, because Irosun Sa gets worked up on things they can't control. How many people here are all upset or all very happy, right, with the elections, the presidential elections? Everybody picked a side. Everybody was somewhere. Some people, social media was going crazy. People were losing their minds. I saw people yelling and screaming and crying, and everybody who said they were going to leave the United States if Trump got elected are still here. But a lot of people went through this process. A lot of people had to do a lot of reflection. And this is not a political view, but this is more of how much could they truly control, right? Were they in a state that elected, or selected one or the other? Okay, great. Did they vote? Okay, great. You can't control any further than that. So why do you care so much? Because is your family good? Is your workplace good? Are you able to reach some of these problems and truly solve them for yourself? Those are the kind of key things that you have to wrap around. And when you got that right, then you can expand your arm further into your community. But don't get so worked up around things. That's something Irosun Sa teaches us. You got to be careful about that, right? And then, as I come to Irosun Sa, I wanna say that Irosun Sa, as I kind of come to a little bit of a close, is it's important for us to emphasize that Irosun Sa is a lifelong journey. Irosun Sa teaches all of us, not just the folks who have it in their Ikofa, Wofaka, Babalaos. Irosun Sa teaches us that we have to continue to strive to learn. Our literacy is important, and we need to continue to push that forward. And that's something that's very important. So, with that said, Irosun Sa, remains always to me a very deep and relevant, Odun, right? That guides us, for and navigating us from the complexities of the modern life, right? It teaches us to offer profound insight into resiliency, ethical conduct, the holistic well-being of things, while while this old new emphasizes ancestral wisdom, right? Again, learning from the past, ensuring that community aligns with today's, search and sustainable, inclusive, and ethical progress of things. Some signs a beautiful sign, and again, it inspires all of us, right? To balance material pursuit with spiritual depth. It ensures, the legacy of integrity and harmony. Nah, Irosun Sa is a beautiful sign. Irosun Sa is a very beautiful sign. But hey, I wanted to talk to you all on Irosun Sa because I thought it will lead to something a little bit more profound that you can take back with you. I think I'll leave it here now, and I'll start to go through the chat and kind of see if there's anything additional that someone may want to bring up on Irosun Sa. Maybe you have a personal experience on Irosun Sa that maybe you want to bring up. Maybe there's something outside of Irosun Sa that you may want to chat about while we still have a little bit of time here. So I started myself for an hour, and it looks like maybe we're at 36 minutes. So, all right, little boy, Greg, you know, you know. Uh, Greg said, I like to be in control. Hey, you're a natural born leader, Greg. That's life. Mapara fungo do irosun sana. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Irosun sa. Irosun sa is very connected to Chango and Ochun. Irosun sa, when you start to look at the things that in the Orishas that you align with, Orisha Oku, Chango, Eshu, Ogun, Ochun, very beautiful Orishas that try to come together. But I tell you this before I leave, because there's always something to say. Irosun sa is a sign that when I told you about with the overreach, right? Irosung Sa is the overreach, but Irosung Sa is very interesting because there's many Patakis or many concepts of this sign that there's another Pataki that talks about where the Iremoles, right, before the divinities descended back descended into this world, they were considered Iremoles, universal beings, right? And this is where they challenge Olodumari's authority, God's authority. Irosun Sa was trying to tell us, right, that we got to be careful about not overreaching. And this is another reason why you can't necessarily put your mind into concepts or things that don't necessarily, um, can relate to you or you can't fix. It's out of your span of control. Irosun Sa, you gotta constantly, you gotta respect the ancestral lineage, but when that respect is there and it's all there, you also gotta make sure that you demand respect as well. Some signs a sign that, at times a person can sit back and absorb a lot of hits from a lot of different angles from either work, spiritual life, and sometimes they absorb a lot. But sometimes you got to know when enough is enough, and you have to demand the respect that you deserve. Irosun sa. That's a beautiful sign. Irosun sa, you know, and to get to Greg's question here, can you talk about how important Ochun is in Irosun sa? Irosun sa is very much important. In this particular sign, Irosun sa is a pillar in I'm sorry, Ochun is a pillar in Irosun sa. Ochun, in this particular sign, we begin to kind of see the authority that Ochun has in order to bring love into the life of others, in order to bring relationships into the life of others. Ochun, you know, always wants to sit higher. And I'm not trying to get into what you should and should not do in your spiritual houses or whatever your elders are telling you that is what right looks like. But for me, the sign of Irosun Sa, especially for those who are crowned, Ochun needs to sit higher than all the other Orishas. Some people may argue me on that, but that's just my opinion. Again, each and every one of you are individuals, each and every one of you have elders. But that's how important Greg Ochun is in Irosun Sa. Ochun wants to sit higher than the other Orishas because Ochun understood the importance of aligning themselves or aligning herself, right, with God, with Owa Lofin. And look at all the stories that Ochun gathers when you say Ochun saved humanity more times than I can count. Oh, Afarafung Ochun. Absolutely, Emla. Absolutely. And then when you talk about Ochun, Ochun is in this particular sign, Ochun becomes the heroiness, right? The hero for women in this sign because of the conflict that they have with Chango, right? There was a moment in Irosun Sa where Chango actually cursed all the women, right? And it was Ochun that came to the defense of the women in Irosun Sa. Man, is Ochun important in Irosun Sa. So in essence, Irosun Sa, there's so much to talk about. So much to talk about. What else we got here? Can you speak about the procrastination and how we can get unstuck from it? So in the topic of Irosun Sa, Alyssa, it's very important for us to always remember that procrastination is the inability to perform actions to the best of your ability. right? That's just a light definition in my words of procrastination. So we got to stay on top of what is the objective that we're trying to get to. You know, the where am I trying to go? Right? If I am trying to get from here to the next state over, I know I have to drive. I know I have to get to where I gotta get to, and I gotta make proper stops, and I'm in a vehicle, and that vehicle needs to take me somewhere, and I gotta fuel it up, and I gotta check the tires, and I gotta. There's a lot of concepts to that, right? But that's the procrastination, right? Because then people say, well, nah, I won't check the tires. Nah, I'll be okay. No, I'll be all right. Maybe I'll get gas along the way. But they don't plan properly, right? So the procrastination is just ensuring that we don't lock that down and we do what it is that we have to do. But you have to get unstuck. And that's a personal, right? We go back to the Pataki. You have to discover how to unstuck yourself, right? Because you could do all the ebos in the world, but if you're not willing to perform and do your part, your ebos are going to only take you so far. So, little boy. All right. I don't see any additional questions in here. I don't see anything else in here. So with that said, I'll probably just wait until this catches up because obviously there's going to be some form of delay. And if there's no more questions, I'm glad that each and every one of you tuned in. I'm glad that each and every one of you had a chance to speak about Irosun Osa today. In addition, before I get off, just remember in the description tab, right? I also put the website in there, right? In case there's those who need spiritual consultations, need to buy products, etc. Super excited for the New Year's. So obviously, there's a lot of traditions and ceremonies and things that we do in the new year. So if you haven't gotten your consultations before the new year, please make sure you get it. Make sure you also schedule one for the next year. In addition, remember that the letra de año or the letter of the year comes out, and then that requires a deep analysis, right? With your odum, with what the letra de año says. If your house has its own letra de año, beautiful, but the analysis still needs to happen. Still make sure you stay in tune so you have a prosperous 2025. But with that said, Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche to each and every one of you. It's been a pleasure. And with that said, nothing else in the chat. You guys have a great night.